It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Well, injecting all the feel-good into your Monday morning. Thanks a lot for joining us on your feel-good breakfast show. Now, last week, Stats SA released their General Household Study for 2018. If you don't know what this is, it's a collection of data from consumers across South Africa, and it gives a pretty interesting look at the average household on a wide variety of metrics, which include health, education, access to drinking water, and transport. And this morning, we're going to unpack some of the stats with a specific focus on communications. And joining us is our friend in tech, Bryan Smith, always ready to lend an ear and expertise.
This is always very much. Dude, it's such a revealing thing always, because it gives us a chance to see if we're normal or not and where we sit in the greater scheme of things. But the communication thing is obviously a bit of a new area, a new territory for us, and where probably some of the biggest shifts are happening within our culture.
Most
so it's
definitely.
interesting to see what's going to be happening in our households. When we talk about communication specifically, what do the stats say? Does anyone still have a landline? Anyone?
Well, it might surprise you, I do.
Well, retro, yeah.
That's pretty interesting. If you consider in the past couple of years, there's actually been a massive shift away from landlines.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's not surprising. We see in South Africa that consumers are far more ready to head towards a mobile connection. In often cases, they might actually have two phones with two different SIM cards to compete essentially between the best mobile data packages and calling packages. But we generally see as well is that more and more consumers where terrestrial connections are available through ADSL, they're increasingly moving away and opting for fiber connections and replacing their landlines with VoIP, which is VoIP, stands for Voice over Internet Protocol, which essentially lets you run a landline connection over the internet. So in the broad senses of the word, we're essentially moving away from landlines, and there's going to be less reliance on copper cables in the future.
I feel like we all know these things, but it's that when they're defined in the real technical terms, then it just your mind a little bit. It just
Where it
bends
becomes the norm.
It bends it. But okay. But all of this then leads us to the next question, which is of course internet connectivity, because that's how we communicate with the world right out there. So in terms of South Africa, which provinces lead the way?
It's perhaps not unsurprising that our biggest metros lead the way. So, for example, Gauteng and the Western Cape lead the way with regards to internet access. And again, it's pretty interesting to note that these are two provinces in the country wherein there's been a massive drive, not only in terms of terrestrial connections, installing fiber to the home, but additionally, we see consumers opting for mobile devices specifically to use at free Wi-Fi points throughout different provinces and government departments. And increasingly, we see that that's the way people are preferring to access the internet for as little cost as possible.
Yeah, and I think cities are beginning to realize that there's a great way of engaging with your people. You can build databases, build networks by offering free Wi-Fi. You're engaging and empowering. But what holds sway at the moment? How are people accessing the internet the most?
Yeah.
It's perhaps unsurprising that people are actually still opting to connect to the internet through work. Obviously, most large corporates...
Cheapskates. You're all cheapskates, man. Come on, man.
Well, it actually shows that the South African consumer is really savvy when we consider how we connect to the internet.
Yeah.
Given in South Africa that we do have a very expensive climate in that regard.
Yeah.
Most large corporate networks will have their own instance of the internet, whatever connection they use, and most people will typically connect to that either on a Wi-Fi connection or through a terrestrial cabled connection at their workplace. The second most interesting fact therein is that after the workplace, most consumers opt for a mobile connection rather than what we call a terrestrial connection.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And when we come back to the second part of our conversation, we're going to focus on things like rural areas, for instance, and how the development of internet connectivity, access to information. Absolutely great business opportunities over there. All of that, of course, with Bryan Smith very shortly.
Stay connected. That's